My name is Brian Maynard, and I'd like to speak to you about luck, or the absence of, something that's been teasing me for the last 40 some years in the heavy industry that I was involved with. I've been in the mining industry for a bit more than 40 years, based in Canada, Australia, Switzerland, Ukraine, the United Kingdom, and been fortunate enough to work in 14 other countries through that time frame in technical and engineering roles for about 10 years, in operations roles for about 25 years, and then in corporate roles for more than 5 years. And through that time, I've been involved in incidents or had incidents occur on my watch where luck, either good or bad, played a big part. And I think over time we can change the ratio of all those things and come up with a better result in the end. So if we look at what I typically found, was that our safety program had various elements of education and training. Then we would go into the field where we could focus on what we learned and practice. But at the end of the day, there were still incidents of serious injury or fatalities where luck, either good or bad, had played a role. If I think of my own experience as a new underground worker, Friday afternoon, heading back up for the weekend to surface, I was digging a drainage ditch. That was my primary job, and I knew on the Monday that I would be working at a different location. So when the rail haulage locomotive came back to pick me up, I hopped onto the back car of a 10-car train. And then as we were passing the area where I knew I was going to be working on the following Monday, I went to throw my shovel off to the side of the tunnel. So that would save me some time on Monday, rather than having to carry the shovel back to the start of the workplace. What I forgot was that as the train was moving past the area where I was throwing the shovel, was that there was a steel chute where ore would pass through into the ore cars. So my head slammed into the side of that chute, my hard hat broke, my cap lamp was torn from my battery pack, and I laid unconscious for a short period of time, a few minutes. Of course, the locomotive operator didn't know that I had been knocked off. And so they headed back to the shaft station and prepared to dismount the train and return to surface at the end of the day. So I had to walk back with my right-hand side of my face all scraped and scratched and bleeding. Of course, I didn't want anybody to know, so I washed up as best I could before I went to the shaft station to call to surface to get someone to come and pick me up. When they came to pick me up, I made sure that they could only see the left side of my face and body, because I didn't want to show them the right-hand side where the injury was. I got to surface, carried my hard hat and cap lamp in my hand so that nobody could tell that they were damaged, and walked so that people could only see the left-hand side of my body and face. So I had a shower, got cleaned up as best I could, and then went to my bunkhouse. Spent the weekend there, hardly out and about, as I didn't want people to see me. There weren't too many people left at camp over the weekend. And then, of course, by Monday was mostly just a bruise, small scrape. And I could just tell people that I'd got hurt on the weekend, and nobody would know that I was hurt in the mine. And so through that first experience, I was able to put that in the memory bank, think about whether I was stupid or naive or untrained, all those factors that led up to me getting hurt in the first place. And I think the main thing is that over time, we take chances, maybe we depend on luck, and I guess my message is we shouldn't have to rely on a roll of the dice. Shortly after moving into operations, I became a young mine manager, and we had a situation underground in the mine where one of my welders was taking a brand new personnel carrier off of a flat deck in an underground maintenance shop. And during the cutting of the temporary supports, that personal carrier rolled on top of him. Now, as it turns out, because of poor housekeeping, there were a number of jack stands near that location that should have been put away earlier in the day, but weren't. And as luck turned out, that personal carrier rolled on top of him, but was supported primarily by the jack stands. So therefore, he was subject to severe burns on his back from the cutting and burning that he'd been doing, but he hadn't been subject to any broken bones or anything. So when I got the call that the ambulance was on its way, of course, we did the investigation and found out what had really happened. And that was another source of good luck or bad luck, depending on how you view the situation, and really was a big eye opener for me that our systems weren't of high enough quality to depend on. And there was just too much inefficiency, bureaucracy, and poor values built into those systems that we need to change. The 6 systems that typically were employed were safety communications, standards and training, incident reporting and investigation, inspections, audits, and risk management. And so over the next few years, it was a question of what do we have to do to get the quality of those systems and programs working more efficiently and more effectively so that we didn't need to depend on luck. In the last year, through social media and other opportunities on the internet, I've seen a number of incidents where it could be debated whether luck came into play or not. I'll just quickly show one that I obtained off the internet. And so once again, depending on how you view the situation, you could think that this was good luck that they weren't hurt really, really badly, or bad luck that the slinging device failed in the first place. And hopefully over time we can learn from these types of incidents so that we can minimize the role of luck and prevent serious injury or fatalities from happening in the future. This is another one published by a Canadian organization. It could be viewed a little bit differently.
Ground-powered mobile equipment is a common reality in the construction industry. Often, this is completed without issue. However, when standard industry-safe work practices are bypassed, or complacency amongst workers and/or operators sets in, there is one certainty. When equipment and workers contact one another, equipment always wins.
And so here's another example of how things happen unexpectedly. And we hope that through this next portion of my talk that we can get people to report near misses and/or injuries so that we can get to the bottom of it and prevent them from happening in the future. And when it comes to incident reporting, there are a number of reasons why people don't, such as example I use in my own case. And it's related to perhaps any of these factors. So could it be that the culture for reporting is not right? Do some supervisors get upset when people report? Do the incentive systems or the bonus systems work in such a way that if you report something, you or your team might face a monetary or disciplinary penalty? Similarly, with the accountability policies, do they discourage reporting in terms of future penalties and career opportunities? Then there's peer pressure, of course, can come either through the negative side of that conversation, or where there's actually support for people to report things. The senior management handled bad news poorly and not get to the root cause of the incident. And I guess secondly, does the reporting process make it easy and efficient for the employee and the supervisor to then file a report and prepare for the investigation? I think the key for me when it comes to the investigation is to really go and see, be curious, dig deep, be friendly, be caring, and be relentless. The example of the right was when a drill had been moved into a new area. It was an older part of the mine, but a new panel to prepare for drilling. It was cold and wet, and the driller decided to buy himself a jacket to help stay warmer and drier. And in the process of installing a new rod to drill the hole deeper, his new jacket got caught by the rust that was on the rod and a lot of friction. And he was flung between the drill rod and the frame of the drilling mast, which was about a 6-inch opening. And so he was crushed quite badly, laid on the ground, still alive and hurt very bad. And fortunate for us that one of his colleagues happened to be driving by on another piece of mine equipment, saw the cap lamp laying on the ground, and went to rescue him and call for help. He spent many months in the hospital, and then many months of physiotherapy before released. When he came back to our community, I went to speak to him and his wife. I had to tell them that during the investigation, we had found out that it had happened to 10 others in the form of a near miss, but they hadn't told us. And so you can see examples at the bottom left of the slide of the types of near misses that they told us about. And I think really the key there was that because we had roped the scene off and taken it out of production for a number of weeks, so that 75 of our other drillers could come and see what had happened, we were then able to use them for feedback on how it might have happened. And just as importantly, to talk about things that we could do to prevent that type of thing from happening again in the future. So it was a value-added exercise, and taught me another lesson around the value of getting input and feedback from our employees and making it safe for people to not only report, but to come forward when we're trying to figure out what happened and how to solve it, so that it didn't happen again in the future. The other big piece for me, being a technical person for the first 10 years of my career, was that I really didn't know much about safety management or safety systems. And so I needed to increase the amount of education and training that I had. I was very lucky to get to meet a couple of retired general managers, formerly of DuPont. They had become safety professionals later in their career, and made very good coaches for me in order to go into the workplace and practice and try out those new systems and try to get things sorted out. I think when it comes to education and training, sometimes the words are used in a way that there's no differentiation, but they are quite different. I think education can be actually done in a short period of time at a start of shift talk or a toolbox talk. Things like, what would you do if lightning struck your vehicle? Should you get out or should you stay in your vehicle? Those types of things can be covered off in a pretty short period of time. Whereas training, I think, is more to do with the functional aspects of your job, and quite often takes much longer than a short education session might. So I think the keys for me are to make sure that the training is relevant, who needs it, is it applicable to their job? It should be timely. So sometimes you do it before the start of shift, sometimes during the shift, sometimes at the end of shift, and sometimes we have to bring people in overtime. And then, of course, under the collective bargaining agreements in some organizations, you're not allowed to do that. So getting it timely is not always easy. I think also we have to make it interesting. People learn things in different ways, some by reading, some by listening, some by watching. Others prefer to do hands-on training. And I think I've seen many, many times where when it's not interesting, the employees grab their mobile phones or cell phones, hold them underneath the table, and then start doing other things, not paying attention to what the instructor is trying to tell them. In terms of duration, I think we have to be careful that the sessions aren't too long and not too many at the same time. Otherwise, it gets very hard to internalize and retain the things that we've been taught. Testing is always an emotional subject. Employees in various global organizations have different levels of primary or secondary education. And how do we make that testing system fair so that we can make sure that the key parts of that knowledge have been transferred and they fully understand it and will follow what we want them to do in the future. And I guess one of the ways to make sure that things have kind of stuck to what we were taught is just to get into the workplace, whether it's an office environment or an industrial environment, to make sure that we talk to the employees and find out whether the education and or training has been value added. Have they been able to increase their skills, knowledge, or experience because of the education or training, which makes our work more safe and more efficient. And lastly, I think all supervisors and managers, senior managers, have a role to play in terms of coaching the people that work for them, report to them, and listen actively to the discussion. Use the 2 ears that we have and the 1 mouth that we have in that particular ratio, and the employee will feel value added and more likely to open up about how that education under training has affected them and what they might like to see done in the future. Once we have that, then I think it's really time to get into the workplace again, whether it's an office environment or industrial workplace, to really get the feedback from the worker. I think before we head out, we need to make sure we understand what the company's strategy, what the values are, what the goals are, long-term goals, and then the short-term objectives that feed those goals, so that we don't contradict anything that's key to the company when we get into the workplace to talk to the crews. Sometimes the culture drives really good behavior, and sometimes it allows for poor behavior. And so by getting in to the workplace or the office floor, we're able to find out, is the culture the way we need it to be, or does it need to be modified through modeling different behaviors through different leadership from the senior management. There are formal and informal tools that can be created or modified in order to make sure that the interactions with the crew members and people in the office really tell us how things are going, what our strengths are, weaknesses, where the opportunities are, where the threats might be. And then we can use those responses really to have a look at those 6 systems that I talked about before. You might have less than 6 or more than 6 in your own company, but I think they do interact with other systems. So safety systems interact with HR systems, they interact with legal systems, they interact with financial systems. And so understanding how those things all fit together is really important. And getting input from our employees and workers is key to understanding then where we can improve, and just as importantly, build up a trust between ourselves and those that work for us. And then before we leave the workplace, again, whether it's an office or industrial setting, is just to get their employment that they'll continue to work safely and make us aware of any hazards that need to be addressed. And I know it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to try out these new things. But as a famous golfer once said, when he chipped the ball into the hole from the bunker, the harder I practice, the luckier I get. And so this was another one of those tools that I found really key in terms of reducing the amount of impact that good luck or bad luck might have on a result. As I mentioned previously, it can be tough to find time to get into the workplace. And so we depend on others to help along the way. So in this example, just trying to indicate that there's only so much energy in the ball. And as time goes on, some of that energy is released. And, sometimes the daily tasks get mundane or boring, and we depend on others to add value to the performance of that task and really figure out why it's important. And safety tasks can sometimes be bureaucratic or regulatory in nature, but we need to do them. And so I think in that previous section when I talked about going into the office or into the field, it's another way that we can use employee involvement to get new ideas and make tasks safer and more efficient. And through that process, they can help add energy to the ball. I think quite often if we involve a couple of workers to solve a problem that we have or an issue that we have in the workplace, and they do that and they're given the authority to try new things, when we provide recognition and coaching after they're done tackling that issue, the news spreads fairly quickly in the workplace that we do value their input and that we are willing to change things. And I think through that process, we're able to add a lot of energy to our day and maybe even necessarily modify meetings, management routines to the point where we make sure that only the right people are involved in the meeting, not too many people being invited that actually don't need to be there. You need to be clear on whether it's for information or whether decisions need to be made. And by doing that, I think we can open out a lot of time in the week or the month for supervisors and management to get into workplace, to get that involvement with our employees and workers underway, and we get into a continuous improvement cycle and really start to build on things and more than likely improve the overall culture of that workplace in terms of safety and efficiency. One of the tricky parts, of course, in heavy industry is sort of integrating everything together. So we've got safety accountabilities, we've got production accountabilities, we've got cost accountabilities, process improvement, people management. And so along the way, I've learned that if we could combine safety and production into safe production, then I think there's opportunities to become more efficient and safer at the same time, reduce the level of hazard, perhaps even engineer out the hazard and try different techniques. Some of the questions to ask along the way: what is the direction for safety in organization? What views and expectations can be clearly communicated? What are the goals and objectives in terms of safety for the organization? And as we move along, how will our progress be measured? How is safe production considered in business decisions? We can't have everything that we would like. We can't fix everything that needs to be fixed all at the same time. But I think through the involvement of the workers and the crews, we can come up with some pretty good things. I guess, you know, we need to think through, is safe production really part of the business plan? There is risk in all activities, whether it be going to work, being at work, or returning home from work, in our daily lives, weekend warriors, etc., as we try and do home repairs. And so how is safety risk to our employees and to their business managed? What routines do we have in place? What systems do we have in place? Are they easy to follow? Are they complicated? And how would we know? Different roles and responsibilities occur in the office and in the workplace. We need to be clear on how those are defined. There's a lot of work being done on responsibilities and accountabilities, but we need to make sure that there's matching authority put forward in those role descriptions and in the expectations that we set. We all work as individuals, we all work as part of a team, we all work as teams. And so we need to understand on an individual basis how our success will be measured. It drives different types of behavior. And then when it comes to communicating and demonstrating, if we walk by a hazard, don't do anything about it, then that sets the stage then for an employee or worker to say, if the boss doesn't care, then why should I care? So it's really important, not just in the words that we say, but how we demonstrate safe production and what our commitment to safety and health is in the short, medium, and long term. And then, of course, there's an overall performance. So lots of little data points add up to bigger ones. How does the information that we get correlate with the data? Beyond the hard numbers, what's expected for those managers in terms of the work environment, how we develop our people, community relations, reputation enhancements, things like that. And I think for me, you know, it's always hard to remember everything, but for me, the 4 keys to safe production were to plan all work, to accept accountability, to care for each other, and to lead by example. And so by remembering those 4 things, we're able to go into the workplace and start to create a different environment for our workers and employees. And so the hope, of course, is that we work hard on education and training. We stay focused. We get into the workplace to interact with our employees, practice different techniques with improving systems, with engaging with people, so that in the future, we don't have to depend on luck as being part of the equation. And we can remove luck from safe production and resulting activities. So once again, I hope you'd have been able to pick 1 or 2 things out of this that you can give some thought to, that will encourage you to try different approaches to managing safety, to managing safety systems, to managing your teams. And once again, I would like to thank Safety Connect for allowing me to be part of your conference, and hope that everybody has a safe and productive time going forward. Thanks again.